This conference will
There
now
we
be
go.
recorded.
You say you use your phone quite a bit?
Yeah, I use my phone just because it has a I think better quality for whatever reason when I record stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me get situated over here. All right, I'm good to
Okay.
go.
So you're doing that too. What phone do you have?
iPhone 12.
Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, cool, man. This is a good deal.
Yeah, thanks
So
for the
yeah, man.
invite.
Absolutely. I appreciate like I said, you taking the time to do this. Just kind of checking you out on LinkedIn. I enjoy what you're doing. I think it's obviously important. So yeah, definitely appreciate the work you're doing.
Hey, the feeling is mutual. Sorry, I love the financial literacy. I think that's huge. I think that's important, especially for I had no idea. I didn't play professionally, but
Uh,
I definitely had to take my lumps after college trying to figure out how this whole thing works financially. I just turned 30 about a month ago, and I'm really just starting to come into my own financially. Like
yeah,
really just starting to be able to, and obviously, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a few different things I do.
sure.
So that was a delay, but I'm in a good place now. But I love the topic, so I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, so what position did you play in college?
I played corner and safety.
Okay, good deal. Good
What about you?
deal. Man, I played linebacker. I was an undersized linebacker. I'm 5'10" and a half. At the time I played, I couldn't gain weight to save my life. I was about 203, like on a good day.
hmm
Um, and the type of defense we played, it was a little bit easier, I guess, back then. But yeah, I was definitely undersized, no doubt about it. I should have been playing safety or corner like you, man.
Yeah, I'm 5'10" also. My playing weight was about 190.
Okay,
I see we
okay.
have the same barber too. We go to the same barber shop.
Same barber boy, same. Mine has a little gray in it though. Yours is a little glistening, and you're
I
still
got one
young.
gray hair. Yeah, I got one gray hair. It just popped up when I. It was crazy. It popped up right when I turned 30. It just sprouted. One little gray hair right in there. Yep, I'm on the way. I'm gonna be looking like you sooner than later with the all
Hey,
gray.
hey, man, I like it. Fine as wine. That's how I look at it. Just
That's right.
so. Um, but yeah, let me go ahead and kind of jump into it, and we can kind of chop it up a little bit and kind of go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool, cool. So, hey guys, what's going on? My name is Pat Brown. I'm a financial advisor here in Lawrence, Kansas with Edmonds Duncan Investment Advisors. Played football for the University of Kansas many years ago, long time ago, and enjoyed my time there immensely. Met a lot of great people and became very passionate there at the university in regards to financial literacy for student athletes. And as time has gone on, I've kind of created a platform, if you will, of trying to help student athletes learn more about financial literacy. And so that's led me down this path of interviewing former student athletes with the hopes that current student athletes can learn from some of their successes and failures. And so my guest for today is Taj Dashaun. I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Taj Dashaun, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct. My full name is Taj Dashaun Johnson. I go by Taj Dashaun. We'll save that for another episode. But yes, sir. You got it right. You got it right.
Okay, okay. So what I like to do, I always like to read basically the definition of financial literacy. And the reason I do that with all these interviews is just I think the financial literacy has such a bad connotation that, when you hear literacy and, a lot of guys may think, oh, I'm just not the smartest person in the world, and kind of stay away from it. So, um, financial literacy is the possession of a set of skills and knowledge that allows an individual to make informed and effective decisions with all their financial resources. And with being an athlete, it's very similar. The habits that we learn, the skills that we learn, the repetition that we learn, it's no different than financial literacy as far as just learning those same type of tools and trying to implement those on a day-to-day basis. So again, I think a lot of guys just have this conception that is totally different. So having said that, I got my man Taj on, played at the University or Stony Brook University. And as we were kind of talking earlier, play cornerback as well as safety. So for that, but for those guys that are listening, he has a great story. I followed him on LinkedIn, and like I said, this definitely should be a good conversation. So welcome, Taj, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pat. It's a pleasure. We were talking beforehand. I love the work you're doing. I love the mission you're on, and I'm just happy to be a part of the conversation today.
No doubt, no doubt. So if we just kind of dive into it, man, tell me your thoughts on money. Looking back your freshman year, your sophomore year, did anyone ever talk to you about, credit, banking or anything of that nature?
Absolutely not. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited. Like, absolutely not. That's why I'm excited about your mission, because I think it's huge what you're doing to be able to shed light on this topic. And it's funny in your intro how you mentioned that you said that when you talk about financial literacy, people will start, running for the hills, like, oh, I'm not the smartest person. And that
Right.
was my thought process too. I used to be afraid of money. And what I mean by that is like afraid of, I grew up in a household where, things were tight. So
Hmm.
you know how it is, especially not to get into race, but sometimes in Black households, it's like that's one of the things you don't talk about, like money. And
Taboo.
it's a stressful, yes, very taboo and stressful. So, but to your original question was about my freshman year. I had no idea. I was just happy to be on scholarship in college. I was happy to have a stipend check that I would take, to New York City and blow in the clubs and all that kind of stuff. So no conversations about credit or savings or anything like that. I was just happy to be there and get my education paid for it.
So, when you came on to the campus, did anyone ever, from, I guess, the university standpoint, we got these young men coming on campus. Was there anything where they were saying, "Hey, look, hey, don't spend all your stipend check in 1 month"? Um,
Yeah,
no.
you already know the answer to that, Pat. You went through it too. Absolutely not, sir. There was no sort of discussion. Like, here's a check, and it was more money than I'd ever had in my bank account, of course, as an 18-year-old, just to like, wow, this is a lot of money. So immediately, me and my boys, we went straight to the mall. Time to get some new
Right.
shoes.
Yep. Yep. I get the
That's
shoes.
pretty much, of course. That's how it was. No conversations. Absolutely not.
Man, I hear you. I don't know how it was on your campus, but a lot of times that in these interviews I share. So at the University of Kansas, up on campus, you can go up there. They have these different carts, and we can go get your nice little T-shirt. You can get a little pack of Skittles. All you got to do is fill out this application. The next thing you know, you got this piece of plastic coming in the mail with a credit limit, and you buy whatever you want. And so when I was coming up, I didn't understand credit at all. Um, Again, similar to what you were saying, as far as just didn't talk about it at home. And so here I am with credit card at 18 years old or whatever, and I'm spending on shoes, and next month I get a bill. Like, what do I do with this? What do you mean a bill? Oh, I gotta pay. Oh, so man, I hear you on that, man. I definitely hear you. So again, looking back, what do you think some of your best financial decisions you made in college, and what were some of the worst, if you have any?
I don't have any. Honestly, Pat, I can't go back and look at my college experience and be like, I made any good financial decisions. There were none. So I'll share some more bad ones just for the sake of this
Yeah, definitely.
conversation.
Go ahead. Let's hear those.
Um, yeah. So number one, I moved off campus my sophomore year, still getting the stipend check. The
Hmm.
problem was, this was my first time managing paying rent and paying bills. So I was still spending like crazy. And for people who don't know, Stony Brook University is in Long Island, but there's a train on campus that will take you directly to New York City, to
Okay.
Times Square. So
Oh,
it's 45 minutes. As a young kid, coming from California and being in New York now, my friends and I, we were on that train anytime, any chance we get, just to go to the city and have a ball. So
yeah.
I found myself in situations where here I was having to ask my parents to send me money, which they weren't super happy about. I had a little bit more leeway because I was on scholarship, so they were glad they weren't paying for college. But I would blow my check, no sort of budgeting, no sort of calculating. Okay, well, you're gonna have to pay rent. What about gas? What about groceries? All these different things. I'm at the club like I'm a big shot every weekend in New
Baller.
York City. Yeah, balling out for no reason. So that was a challenge. And honestly, I didn't really. And it's funny because I always used to think growing up, you hear stories of people in credit card debt and things like that. And I used to think, well, that's so dumb. Why would you spend money you don't have? And,
Yep.
I thought I was wise back then, but then I graduated from college. And when I moved back home, I got my first credit card. And
Mhm.
I was so desperate to move out of my mom and dad's house to have that freedom that I had in college that I put my first month's rent to move out on a credit card. So I was starting out in the hole in my adult life. And it just got worse from there. And it took me a lot of time to dig out of it. So it's been a journey, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. No, you mentioned just earlier how, as far as bad decisions, and one of the reasons I asked that question because a lot of times, number one, we don't talk about it. That's first and foremost. But number two, those that are listening and hearing, you know, your message, I think it's just important that they hear, okay, here are our struggles. Here's what we struggle with. We've been there, we've done that. We're out of school now, but here are some of the struggles that we had while we were in school, even affecting us to this day. So I appreciate you, sharing that with us. So um, looking back on college now, what do you wish you would have done different in regards to dealing with money?
I think that I would have found um, someone who knew what they were talking about, an expert, right? So someone who was well off, or someone who dealt with finance for a living, like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and got some guidance on that, and just had a conversation and just got educated, because it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
So I didn't know that I was ignorant when it came to finance. I didn't know that.
yeah,
But if I could go back and talk to my former self, I'd be like, number one, control your spending. At least have some sort of budget to make sure you're not having to call and ask your parents for money. Let's take care of that portion first, and then
sure.
also look at some ways that you can start building credit. Because if I would have started early, then by the time I graduated, I would have
Yep.
graduated with an 800, credit score, instead of having no credit history. So,
Yeah,
there's a lot. I would have hopefully found somebody like you to give me some guidance and get my mind right.
yeah. You mentioned something that rings a bell with me. So as I mentioned before about the whole credit thing, I was on campus just getting my pack of Skittles and my T-shirt, and didn't understand credit. And so even today, when I do talk to younger guys, um, one of the things I talk to is credit, understanding credit. Yes, it is a dangerous, very dangerous thing. However, if used correctly, it can be very, very beneficial. And so my daughter, who just graduated from USC out in California, first thing I did, when she became a freshman, was get her credit card. And I sat down with her and I explained how to use it, the correct way to use it. Get it paid off. Buy something paid off. Buy something paid off. And so now you fast forward, she's sitting in a situation, she understands how to use it, and now she has a good credit score. So when she goes and whether it's getting a place to stay, whether it's financing a car, it's gonna look a little bit better for her versus the latter. And so for those that are watching, understand credit makes a difference for employment, makes a difference as far as leasing, getting a cell phone, obviously getting a car. It makes a big, even insurance. If you get insurance, they check your credit. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because it makes a big difference. So um, so how have the life or how have the habits you formed in college affected life after college, or has it?
Definitely has. I was forming bad habits,
Hmm.
and so when I graduated, those bad habits continued.
Yeah.
I found myself in a bit of a hole, and what I had to do was I started educating myself. By that time, I was in my early 20s and trying to play catch up on credit card bills. So yeah, I had to create new habits. That's the best way I can answer your question. My habits were
Yeah.
terrible, so I had to create new habits and understand how to manage money, how to pay off my debt, so I could not have that hanging over my head,
Mhm.
and then get to a point where I was talking to you, before we started recording. I just turned 30 about a month ago, and I'm just now starting to be in a place where I'm debt free. My income is steadily increasing, but I could have been in this position a lot earlier had I been educated, had I had better habits.
Yeah.
Um, but you live and you learn. So here I am. you
Yeah, and
know,
you make another great point. So when I start this little platform or passion project, people are not going to get rich off of what I'm saying. My whole thought process is I want to shorten that gap for learning. So the quicker you learn about, for example, credit, it's better off you're going to be, so that you're not making these mistakes. You're able to develop the habits a little bit quicker versus not, developing these habits. So even at 30, being debt free, you're still ahead of the game, believe it or not.
Right.
A lot of people would love to be, in your position. So, you're a quick learner, put it that way, man. So good job.
Thank you. That's good to hear. I don't always feel that way, so that's good affirmation. Thank you for the words of encouragement. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're kind of coming towards the end as far as the questions are concerned. Um, what are some of the pitfalls you would hope that your story could prevent for young student athletes out there? So again, the young Tajes of the world, if you will. What do you think your story could help them with?
Yeah, I think this has been a great conversation because I'm able to reflect. I don't know if I've reflected like this. So this, thank you for having this conversation because this creates a space to do that. So some
Sure.
of the things we've been talking about so far, I hope they take away from my story to number one, control your spending. Make sure you have a budget and you're being intentional about where your money's going, so you don't find yourself in any sticky situations. Also,
Hmm.
educate yourself. Get with professionals. Reach out to Pat. Make sure get your mind right. Get educated on all the resources that Pat has for you. I'd say, you know, if you don't have it, don't spend it. Like, don't be careful about the credit cards. Oh, start early. That was another great point that you brought up about how you got your daughter situated her freshman year. Start earlier than that if you can. I know
Yeah.
people now who I heard, correct me if this is wrong, Pat, but you can have, even as a child, like, you don't even have to be 18. You can add a child to your, like, as a on your credit card. Is that possible? Can you do that?
As
Like, if
an
you have a
authorized
5-year-old
user.
kid, right?
Yeah. And certainly that would help. I haven't heard as early as 5, but certainly if high school, or even potentially middle school, if add them as an authorized user, and of
Hmm.
course that just obviously increases and helps their credit long term. But again, just learning those tools and creating those habits are just they're big. Even we start talking about dealing with whether it's banking or investment accounts. Again, you're not going to get rich while you're in college. However, if you develop those habits, whether it's $20 a month, whether it's $30, I mean, we eat more than that in food. So by opening some type of account and learning, getting those statements, reading those statements, understanding what a stock is, understanding what a mutual fund is, just educating yourself, just to kind of go back to your initial point. Create those habits, keep learning. So you're right on the ball with that, man.
Yeah, thank you. It made me excited when I heard that news the other day that you can actually add them as an authorized user. Because I don't have
Mm,
kids yet, but when I do, that's like, oh, I'm definitely gonna have them set up as early as possible.
absolutely, no
Mhm.
doubt. Um, so like I said, we're kind of coming to the end. I wanted to touch on this because I touched on something else. So on LinkedIn, like I said, that's where I first saw and kind of listened to what you had to say. But you also have a book, which I see over your right shoulder there.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
Thrive. It's called Thrive After Sports, helping athletes dominate the game of life. Um, and a lot of what you said resonated, certainly with me, even at my old ripe age. As athletes, we're so linear as far as how we think about things. Um, I got to be an NFL player, or nothing else matters. Your identity gets so ingrained in, what you do as an athlete on the field or the court. Um, and even to this day, yes, I'm older. Yes, I realize that I am more than quote an athlete, or was athlete back in the old days. But I have to have goals in order to do things. Like I just can't go do something. I need to have a goal. I need to, in order to do X, Y, Z, I need to have a goal. And so it's interesting as athletes that you just kind of always have these ingrained goals. So if anything, you can just kind of touch on kind of what you're doing now. Like I said, the book, the podcast, man, just go into it, because I think what you're doing is just so important for that space after an athlete essentially retires, whether it's college or pros.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pat. The book came about totally by accident. I've been working with athletes since 2017. So I mentioned when I came out of college, I struggled for a few years, was definitely struggling with my identity now that I was no longer a football player, was struggling financially. I was making good money, but because I had dug myself into a hole with credit cards and didn't understand budgeting and spending, I was in a weird place. And then around the age of 26, I had this epiphany, and that was 2017. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I felt like I was being called to do something more. And because I had reached that point at 26 where I was making great money in recruiting, I was managing a team. I had sort of made it from the outside looking in. Sure. And I had a lot of teammates who were like former teammates, even guys I played high school ball with, who were kind of struggling. So I became like an unofficial mentor to these guys. And then they would start to refer other people to me, like family members. Like, hey, my cousin, I remember the first one. He was like, my cousin just finished playing basketball at TCU. It was a women's basketball player. So I'm like, oh, this is bigger than just football players. And then I started doing research, and I was like, wow, this is something that a lot of athletes are struggling with. And there was really no resources. It's getting better now, but in 2017, there was virtually nothing. There was like one article on the NCAA website that taught you how to, prepare for a job interview. And I'm like, that's really not addressing this issue head on. So before I knew it, I was doing these coaching calls before work, after work, on the weekends, and I was really enjoying it. And I was doing research, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to put together some curriculum. So I actually formed my coaching program, Thrive After Sports, going into 2018, and just consistently just pushed forward with it and started to get a reputation. I partnered with different athletic departments, and they would send me people. And then I partnered with Athlete Soul, which is a great nonprofit, and they have funding where I'm able to work with transitioning athletes for free. And Athlete Soul I will invoice them, and they will pay me with some of the grant money.
That's awesome.
So it's been great. And then I started the podcast, Thrive After Sports, available on all podcast platforms. Go check out Thrive After Sports in 2019. And then I published my book, same name, Thrive After Sports, in 2020, or right in the middle of the pandemic. That book was released. And the company that I published my book through, I hit it off with the owner. He's a former football player. He played at Stephen F. Austin out here in Texas. And he's about 10 years older than me. He became a business mentor. Long story short, he really loved what I was doing because I published my book through his company. And he invited me on as vice president to essentially build out a sports division, helping more athletes tell their stories and publish books. So I've been doing that since last year as well, around the same time my book came out. And so yeah, that's what I do. I'm helping people publish books and leverage books for speaking engagements. And that's been a fun part of it because I can do what I was already doing in the athlete transition space, but now I have a whole team and an entire company behind me to support my projects.
Man, Taj, boy, go ahead and do the thing.
I'm trying, Pat, came a long way from blowing money on shoes at Foot Locker with the stipend check.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, did you, after you kind of got towards the end of your school, I mean, did you have any aspirations of trying to make it to the NFL or anything of that nature? Or were you just like, yeah, it is what it is?
Yeah, I didn't have a good enough career to have any NFL prospects. I think that, people always blame it on politics and stuff like that. It was a combination of things. I had a bunch of different coaching changes, not head coach, but defensive coordinators and position coaches. And you know how it goes. They bring in their players. So I never really got a chance to shine. I never got an opportunity to play. So I kind of knew that I wasn't going to the league around my junior year. I was like, this is not happening. But I was still unprepared because, you just eat, breathe, and sleep football 24/7. So it's like, but yeah, no NFL prospects on my horizon.
Hey man, it's not all glamorous as they portray it, which I'm sure it's only a certain percentage that money really hits, but then like you said, the other it's not what people think, put it that way.
Right.
So before we get off, I had a conversation literally just the other day. Former student athlete, she ran track, and we were just talking about just the mental aspect of things and the financial literacy. And you get to leaving school, and if your finances are not right, it cause you to kind of spiral. And so, and then of course, talking to you, how you just kind of mentioned a little bit as far as just not necessarily knowing what you want to do, and kind of go into a kind of a depression. And so the depression, the mental side of things after football, I'm seeing a lot more since I've started, I guess, doing this passion project where it's obviously it's a real thing. I mean, guys and girls, deal with this quite a bit, and I just had no idea, if I'm being completely honest. So, like I said, it's good that what you're doing, because there's definitely space for it.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. And the feeling's mutual. I love what you're doing too. It's so important. And I know that people listening to this episode, just by what you're sharing and all the people you have on your show, there's, you're doing great work, and I appreciate you for allowing me to contribute to this conversation, because we could literally be saving lives right now by talking about this type of stuff.
Yeah. Just if people can just take a couple of nuggets.
Yes, sir.
So, but man, like I said, I appreciate your time. I'll let you get going, and let's definitely stay in contact, man. And you never know, down the road, let's do another show.
Let's do it. I love to have you on my show as well. I'll reach out to you, and we can kind of coordinate, because this is the first of many conversations. I can already tell. It's one of those. Yeah.
No doubt, man. Well, I'll let you get going, man. I appreciate you, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good, Pat. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yep. Take care.
You too.